Okay. So this is Haley, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Uh, so if I look really close to the camera, it's just because my screen's really small on this laptop and I have bad eyes.
Oh, no worries.
So sometimes I have to look closer to the words. All right. So this will be just open-ended. I am willing to go over whatever you want me to, whatever you need, whether it's HTML or the homework or JavaScript in general or any
Okay.
questions you might have.
Well, for me, I already know the basics of HTML from taking Intro to Web Design, but I'm a little bit confused about Java.
Okay.
Um, I did find just copying down the code that it gave me, but then um, yeah, I guess maybe you could go through that. I don't really know what
Sure.
specific questions I have, but
All right. That's cool. Let me share my screen. Okay. There we go. Can you see my screen there?
mhm.
All right. Let me just throw some HTML up really fast. So normally what I do is I'll have just a basic HTML kind of structure of the website saved on the disk. And that way I can just kind of open it up, and I don't have to remember how to all these different tags that are really easy, but also easy to make mistakes on. That way I have a starting point that I already know works. But since I wasn't sure what the questions would be, I didn't do that this time. Okay. So script. Oh, that is not how you spell script. Oh, there you go. But that one's actually okay. And okay, so then I have a body. I'll kind of set it up the way the homework is. Now, I don't know if I should be tipping my hand here, but I am not an expert um, web programmer. And so I use cheat sheets and notes all the time. If I did this for a living, it wouldn't be so bad. But
Yeah.
my my day job is actually doing desktop programming. So now my web programming is like really old. Luckily, you don't have to for this class. It's all about learning the JavaScript.
Okay, great.
So that means my HTML doesn't have to be that good. So I'm just kind of setting it up. And I need my div tag. All right, so this should be just a basic website. Let's make sure it works real quick. Oh. Okay. That doesn't look quite right. What did I do wrong here?
Oh, it's just the button tag is spelled wrong.
Oh, it is. It's not button, it's button. Perfect. Save that. Refresh. Oh, much better. Okay. So we have a basic website here. Okay. So let me just go over the tags real quick for those who aren't here, who may be watching the video.
Okay.
So we always start with the doc type HTML. Every HTML5 website has that. You have the HTML tag, which surrounds the whole website. The language is optional, but it's just good to have it in there. Every website has to have a head and a body section. The head is where we have our meta tag, which we can define our character set among other attributes, and that's where we usually put our script section. And that's where our JavaScript is. Now, there's some questions I noticed in the discussion board about whether we have to put the type in.
Oh, yeah.
And I know the book said that is something that you always have to have. But I did some research because the validator from W3 Schools was saying it's optional, giving people warnings. So I did some research, and it says that this was something that was required back in HTML4 and before, but in HTML5 it's optional. So it just defaults to JavaScript all the time. If you have something else, like another scripting language that you're using, then you'd probably have to put it in at that point. But for HTML5, it's optional. So if you put it in the W3 Schools validator, they'll give you a warning. It's not an error. It's not a big deal. You can choose whether to leave it in there or not. So I'll just leave that up to you.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do. Okay. So and then the body is where all of the is where the stuff that you're going to see on the page is at. So in this case, if you just type text, it's just going to show up as text on the website, on the web page. So this that just shows up corresponds to this right here. Then we have our tag right here, which is an input tag, which is the thing that gives us this text box that allows the user to write something in there. Then we have a button tag, which works best if you spell button correctly. And the button has a type button. There are other types, but in this class we really only ever use a button type. And then you have an on-click event. And this is the function that gets called in your JavaScript when you click the button. Okay, and we'll get to that here more in a second. You have what's in between the two tags, the open and close tags, which is the text, which will be inside your button. So in this case, it's verse. And then every program we do from here on out is going to have a div tag. And a div tag is just a section of your website that's going to contain information. It's going to contains text of some sort. And we give it an ID so that we can reference it from within our JavaScript. And we'll get to more to that when we do the JavaScript. And in this case, it's empty because we're going to have the JavaScript itself put the information into that tag, that div. So in the first week, we had a document.alert that we used to output information to the user. That's the only assignment this whole semester that we'll use the alert, the document.alert. We'll use div tags from here on out. I kind of don't know why they put that in the first assignment because it always confuses people later on as they try to use it later, and then the validator doesn't like it, and they get bad scores and they don't know why, and then I have to go and grade it by hand, and I'll give them credit for it, of course, but just a lot of work and concern for everybody around. So just so everybody knows, we're always going to use div tags to do our output. Okay, so everything between these two script tags will be our JavaScript. In the assignment, let's see. So they gave you the functions already. It's this week that they do the defined table. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think so.
I have it in my notes, but I just want to make sure. So we first create the defining table. Now the defining table is just for your information only. It doesn't have anything to do with the programming itself, but it helps you organize your program. So in this case, we want the input to be the name that somebody enters into the text box. And so that's our only input. So we'll just say the input is name. The processing is we'll create a verse of scripture. That inserts the name. So this is what we're going to do with our program. And then the output is the scripture containing the name. Okay. So now, because we did the defining table, we'll end our comment here. Because we did the defining table, it kind of helps us organize our thoughts in what we're trying to do. This is such a simple program. You're probably thinking, that's kind of dumb. But as things get more complicated, the defining table will get more important. Okay, so the function, so the JavaScript that they give you, that you're copying down, or apply scripture, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the first thing it does, I have it written down here, so I'm just copying it. I'll type it all out and explain what's going on. Lost my spot. All right. Just wondering how much I should do right off the bat, but I'll just do it all, and then we can talk about it. Okay, so here's my scripture. So we'll just go through each part. So the first thing we do is we have a variable that we'll call name. So you use the var keyword to let the computer know that you're creating a variable, and this is what we're just going to call it. A variable is just it's like a box that you're going to put some information inside of, and we give it a name so we know how to reference it throughout the program. So it's like saying, okay, here's a box. We're going to use a magic marker like we're moving and write in big letters and say the name. And every time we refer to what's in that box, we're going to call it by its name, which in this case is called name. Not to be too confusing there. Just we happen to be asking for the people's name this time. The way we get the name is, so the user is going to put their name inside this text box right here, referenced by this tag, this input tag. Now we give it an ID right here so we know how to reference it. So that inside of our JavaScript program, we can call it something and the computer knows what we're referring to. In this case, I called it name input box because it's the input box that contains the name. Now, whenever you want to get information out of an input tag, we do something called, we call a function called getElementById. So document means the HTML document that we're creating. We have a dot saying we're going to call a function inside this document called getElementById. Now, this is a built-in function. And it's saying, I want information from the website, from the web document, and I'm going to get it by its ID name. And inside the parentheses and inside quotes, we put the name of the ID that we're trying to get. So the reason why we have to do it at all, in this case, we only have one input, right? But say we had two inputs. Okay. Say we have two inputs, and I say, okay, give me the information from the website. Well, we actually have two different spots where somebody could have put information. One has an ID of name input box, and the other one has an ID of input 2. And so by putting this inside the parentheses, it tells the computer which one we want the information from. In this case, it's the name input box. If we wanted the one from here, we would say input 2. Okay, so this is just how you identify which of the input tags, the text boxes, you want to grab the information from. Get back to what it was. And then, once we have the element, which is this whole thing, we're asking for the value inside the box. So this grabs this whole tag and all the information contained within it. And when you ask for the dot value, we're only grabbing what was entered inside the box. I don't know if that sounds a little confusing, but this is the element, and what the person writes inside the text box is the value of the element.
Okay.
So this seems like a lot of information right here in order to just grab what's inside the text box, but each one addresses a piece of it. This says we're getting it from the HTML document. This says I'm going to grab an element by the ID name, or give it the name, which then returns all of this information, and then the value is just what was inside the what was entered inside the input box, the text box. There's a lot there, a lot to digest, but I'm not sure how to explain it any different.
No, yeah, that's good.
Okay. So all this is just so that we can grab whatever the person writes and puts it inside this box called name, this variable. So the next thing we do is we're going to build up another variable called scripture. And this variable can contain a lot of words. Some of these words are words that we just put in by ourselves, as part of the program. Mm-hmm. But we can also put in variables. In this case, the name that somebody entered in. And when you're kind of building up a bunch of words together, a long string, you have to concatenate them. And so that's what the plus does. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So it's kind of like addition. You're saying, put that, I'm going to add that to it, and then I'm going to add this to it, and then I'm going to add this to it, and then I'm going to add this to it, and put it all together and store it in this box called scripture. This variable called scripture. Now, you don't have to have these pluses here if you don't want to. If you wanted, you could just put it on one great big long line. So then, in this case, we have this piece of this piece of string plus this piece of string plus all the rest of it all in one line, and you'll get the same thing.
Okay.
The reason why people do this, though, is because I can't see the whole thing all at once. I kind of have to scroll sideways, and there's nothing worse than having to scroll sideways. And so in order to avoid that, they just break it up into multiple lines. And since concatenation works with explicit strings, just like variables, we'll just put a plus in it, and we'll go line to line, and in that way we can see the whole thing all at a glance. We don't have to scroll left and right to see it all.
Okay.
So once everything is said and done, we're going to have, and I, Josh, that's my name, or Haley, or Bob, did go into the Mount oft, and I did pray oft unto the Lord, wherefore the Lord showed me great things. Sounds like Jacob hearing the Lord got the scripture. Now, a little gotcha is this is explicit, so it'll only print out exactly what you write here. But you'll notice when you concatenate it, you might want to add a little space.
Oh yeah.
So that when you put this, now this scripture doesn't, it's not as big a deal because it's a comma. But say that comma wasn't there and this space wasn't there, when you saw it all put together, it would say, did go into the Mount Opdand. There's no delineation of the word. It doesn't automatically know that, oh, hey, I should put a space there.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think has caught people a little bit this week. So now, once you have your scripture, and this is basically all the information you're going to output to the user, right? We're referring up here, the scripture containing the name. So it's all sitting here inside the scripture, but we need to put it out to the user again. And that's where our div tag comes in. Okay? We have this little section of HTML that nobody can see. It's invisible until we put something inside of it. So again, we're going to use this document, the element by ID. And this time, we're going to use the ID of the div tag. And we're going to reference something called the inner HTML. Now, why is it not value? Why is it called inner HTML instead of value? I don't know. Somebody decided that. But for div tags, it's always inner HTML. I don't know. It seems more consistent if it'd say value, but it doesn't. So that's just something you just got to remember.
Okay.
And so we're going to set this inner HTML to be equal to the information that's contained in the variable called scripture. And once all that is said and done, it's going to go through here, grab your name, build your scripture, and it's going to say, okay, inside this div tag, I want to put this text right here. I'm going to put it into this div tag, and that'll display it out to the user. And that's all. So, do you have any questions up to this point?
No, I think that helps a lot. I feel like I
Okay.
had just a bunch of like scattered ideas of what JavaScript was, but now it's coming together.
It's gelling a little bit.
Yeah.
So, we talked about this, right? All right. So let's go ahead and save it. And let's watch it. Let's watch it happen. Okay. So we saved it. Come up here. Going to refresh, so that has all of my most recent changes. Put my name in here. I'll hit verse, and okay, if all goes well, you'll see a scripture. You think I've done this before, right? Okay, let's see what's going on. So Chrome has something called a debugging tool. So if you go into the menu, into Tools, Developer Tools, you get this section over here, and it has this all your code that you saved in your text editor. And so you can see everything here. And what you can do is you can put a breakpoint in. So if you click over here by the numbers, it'll say, okay, I'm going to run this program, and I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to let you inspect some stuff while you're going through the program. There'll be more information about the debugging tool. I think week 4 or 5.
Okay.
But just so you can see kind of what's going on and make sure the computer's doing what it's supposed to do, we'll watch it here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. Put the name in again. And at first, so the button right here is going to get pressed. So it calls this function, and this blue line says, okay, right now the computer is on this line, and I'm gonna do this line for you. This says, okay, do that step. So we're gonna go to the next step, and now we can see. If I pull this out maybe a little bit more, it tells me after the computer executes this line, what is inside the variable called name, which in this case is Josh. Now, if this said nothing, like just 2 quotes, they'll say, "Uh-oh, I did something wrong here. This is where my problem is. This is why my name isn't showing up in the scripture." But because we know it works, we know that name contains Josh. So it's just a little tool to let you know what's going on, what the computer thinks is going on, and to make sure it matches up what you think the computer should be doing. You take another step, and it's going to build the scripture. So now, if you look in here, the scripture variable contains, and I, Josh, to go into the mount off, yeah. And it also tells you what's in the variable, Josh, or name, if you could see it. But you can't. Yeah. You can also hover over the variable and it'll tell you what's in it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then the last step is to just output it. So we'll take that last step, and we should just do it over here. And so this is just a little tool that just to make sure that things are going the way you think they ought to be going, and if not, where the problem is. So a debugger. And you can just finish it off. Okay. Now, let me just close it with this little X here. A couple gotchas. It's when you're typing things out, it's really easy to not to do typos with your ID names. So say in here, I forgot to capitalize my I, but I did capitalize it here. Okay, guess what? It's not going to be able to find that ID, and so when you run it, name is going to end up with nothing. There's going to be nothing in there because it couldn't find it. It doesn't give you an error. It just says, okay, there's nothing in an element called name input box because it's not here. So that's something that happens all the time. Like, what the heck is going on? Is look for spelling errors in your IDs. Likewise, these two have to match exactly. Same deal, spelling errors. You have to have the parentheses. So if you just do apply scripture without the parentheses, it's not going to happen. JavaScript is really forgiving and it won't give you errors when you think it ought to.
Yeah.
Like if it doesn't find a function, it'd be really nice if JavaScript said, hey, I can't find that. But it won't. It'll just say, tried to find it, couldn't find it. Oh well. That's about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And again, the output. The spelling errors, that's a big deal. Make sure that you have these braces, the open brace and the closed brace all the way around it. Sometimes people, will get excited and just leave off one of them. The IDs, they can be single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't matter, but you can't have one of each. They have to match. So you either do single quotes on both sides, or you can do double quotes on both sides. For this assignment, I think that's all the gotchas that I know about. Any questions?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay,
Definitely helped.
cool. So that's one of your programs. I'm sure you've already done up to this point,
Mhm.
since it is Thursday night. But if not, you have a few more hours.
Yeah, I got it, but
Okay.
it helps to know how it all connects.
How it
So,
flows, right? Because
yeah.
without the flow, it's just a lot of information all put together,
Mhm.
and it kind of jumbles together in your head.
Yeah.
And as things get harder, it'll be harder to figure it out unless you kind of already have a little practice on the easy stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Next week, instead of having you just modify some existing working code, you're going to be creating it from scratch. And so, but like I said, what I like to do is I'll save this guy. And then next time I'll open him up, and I'll just go ahead and delete my script, and I'll rework this, but all this other stuff will already be put together in it, and I won't have the risk of accidentally, making a dumb error up there,
Yeah.
not thinking about it, right?
Hmm.
So, anyways, okay.
All right. Awesome.
If you don't have any more questions, we'll just be done.
All right. Sounds great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks for coming, Haley.
You're welcome.
You gotta be the proxy for everybody who didn't get to be here. Okay.
Sweet. Sounds good.
All right. I hope you have a good night.
Yeah. You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.